How do you imagine an 80-year-old man? Or perhaps a woman in the middle of her 50s? Clearly, some seem to age differently from others, and some will live longer. How come? I'm a scientist. I'm a molecular biologist, and I feel like I have the best job ever. I'm free to ask questions that nobody asked before and come up with novel discoveries. This is what I tell my students. You may be the very first human to ever see this, and I mean it. As a biologist, I study life, which inevitably means I also study what makes us cease to be alive, the process of aging. You may ask whether aging is a disease or not, or if it is a disease, then we should cure it. Honestly, scientists still are debating about that, and probably the best answer came from a colleague of mine who discussed that maybe aging will become a disease when drugs to cure it will be discovered. Meanwhile, we'll all agree that aging, whether a disease or not, is the single largest risk factor for several important human diseases, including cancer, cardiovascular disorders, and neurodegeneration. So yes, aging is well worth studying. But aging is so complex, and for a long time we did not understand what makes an organism to age. But scientists now think that we know what makes us age. We age because the cells in our body age, and these cells are called senescent. These cells are cells that have lost their ability to function properly. They don't proliferate, and worse, they are toxic to the surrounding cells. I'll explain how in a minute. And therefore, the question becomes, what causes a cell to become senescent? Because as far as we knew, cells had all the means to keep themselves in perfect conditions. Everything that breaks down a cell and stops working can be made anew to replace the old version, the old damaged part of the cell. So why cells eventually senesce? Why cells, what goes wrong in these cells? Until we realized that in our cells we have one single crucial component that, if damaged, cannot be replaced. And that single component is our DNA, our genome, shown here packed in chromosomes. Our DNA stores the information of who we truly are. You cannot replace that. And therefore we age because the only irreplaceable component in our cells, in our body, our DNA, gets damaged. But then scientists discovered that DNA can actually be repaired when it's damaged. And this make us wondering, because if DNA damage is repairable, and therefore DNA damage is reversible, how can it cause aging, which is an irreversible event, almost by definition? Well, that's the question that my team and I ask, and this is where our contribution to understanding on the fundamental causes of aging come in. We discovered that our DNA has an Achilles heel. There is a portion of our DNA that damage cannot be repaired, and this can have irreversible consequences. And this Achilles heel of our DNA are the ends of our chromosomes. You see them here in yellow. They are called the telomeres. Telomeres are a major problem for our cells. Every time cells divide, telomeres shorten and deteriorate. And when they become too short and too damaged, cells cannot fix that. This triggers an alarm of irreparable DNA damage and causes cells to become senescent. So in our body, cells divide, telomeres shorten, and when they become too short, that is the cause of aging in the cells of our body. However, not all our cells duplicate. Think about our neurons. The same neurons stay with us all our lives. So, no cell duplication, no telomeric shortening, no aging? Of course not. We then discovered that, yes, DNA damage is repairable. That was, by the way, a discovery which was worth a Nobel Prize. However, if damage occurs within the telomeres, remember our Achilles heel, that DNA damage cannot be repaired. And therefore, at telomeres in these non-duplicating cells, DNA damage accumulates, turning telomeres into graveyards of irreparable DNA damage, causing them to become senescent. So in summary, telomeres are the irreparable portion of our irreplaceable DNA. We age when telomeres get damaged, either because they become too short in duplicating cells, or they accumulate irreparable DNA lesions in non-dividing cells, and this, again, causes them to become senescent. And this has quite a profound impact not only on senescent cells, but also on the surrounding cells, because senescent cells are contagious. They start to secrete nasty chemicals around them that make surrounding cell senescent too. And therefore, what starts as a small problem progressively becomes a bigger problem that may impact the entire functions of an organ or an entire body. You may wonder then, this is a problem. Shall we then attempt to cure aging, or better said, age-related disorders, disorders of aging? Now you have heard enough that senescent cells are bad, and therefore you will not be surprised to learn that scientists are developing drugs to kill selectively senescent cells or to reduce the ability of these senescent cells to release those toxic molecules. In our laboratory, we are developing an approach that targets the alarm which is triggered by the short or damaged telomeres. It's early days, but in models of age-related disorders, we see promising results. How many clocks did you hear? Because certainly I heard more than one. And this reminds me that so far I made it sound like there is one clock only, the telomeres, that break down and cause cells to become senescent. But it's fair to say the scientists have also identified additional clocks. A popular one is a set of modifications on our DNA. They are called methylations, which change with time, according to which you can tell your age, but perhaps even your propensity to disease and death. Recently, we wanted to study whether the telomere clock and these so-called methylation clocks are synchronized or they control each other. The experiment is still running in my lab, but the results that we obtained so far seem to indicate they know these clocks run independently from each other, which is shocking, which suggests that there may be many clocks running independently in our cells, in our body, and therefore possibly different mechanisms may be causing aging, and therefore different cells and perhaps different individuals may age differently when one clock or the other has reached the end of its run. So yes, many clocks. I told you in the beginning, aging is complex, which is great news for generations of scientists to come. There is still plenty to discover. There are still plenty of things for the first time. You now may be expecting me to give perhaps a recipe for longevity or share with you the secret to immortality. People talk about hacking life to achieve that. I disagree. To hack a system, you need to know precisely how it works. And humans are not computers. We do not know enough to do that safely. And surely, immortality is out of reach. Therefore, meanwhile, let's stick to what we all already know. Regular physical exercise, a healthy diet, a healthy lifestyle with a rich social life can lengthen your lifespan in health, what we call health span. Although honestly, probably carefully choosing your parents is still your best way. Seriously now, there may be ways to become immortal, and they have nothing to do with our DNA. It's about the legacy we leave behind through our contributions to human culture and to the people around us. As a scientist, I hope to leave a legacy through my work in understanding life's processes and hopefully identifying ways to treat important human diseases. And each of us can leave a mark by improving generations to come. Pantarei, an old philosopher, used to write, Anicca, Buddhists would concur. Everything passes. We too will pass. But the lives we touch, that's our way to make a difference. Let's make sure we leave something behind worth reminding. Thank you.